over in these tapes, I'm going to try to show you how to set up the curriculum and give you an outline on teaching subjects. And in a curriculum of a Bible Institute, of course, the main emphasis should be on the Bible itself. There are essential books in the Bible that need to be taught verse by verse. Now, if I'm going to pick out 4 essential books, I'd say they'd be Genesis, John, Romans, and Revelation. Now, those are the essential ones. John is the essential book on getting saved. Romans is the essential doctrinal book on the past, present, and future of the believer. In regards to his salvation, Genesis is the seed plot of the entire Bible, and Revelation is the culmination of the entire Bible. So if you have to start there somewhere with Genesis, John, Romans, and Revelation. Now, in regard to teaching these books, if you're going to teach a verse-by-verse exposition, you have to have some help from commentaries, because commentaries are the only books that take up every verse in the text. You get devotional commentaries that go across the material broadly and generally and make spiritual application, but in a Bible Institute, after all, the student is there to learn the Bible, not to learn spiritual devotional truths drawn from the Bible, although these can be done. And so it's necessary in teaching Bible books to avail yourself of commentaries, verse-by-verse comments on the passages. These are extremely difficult to get of any fidelity, but I mean, there are no major exegetical commentaries. When I say exegetical, I mean there are no major commentaries that go into the meaning of every word and every verse in the Bible that are true to the Reformation text. There isn't one in print, because all the major commentaries have come out since 1611 and have been written by men who wanted to surpass the King James Bible with their own writing. Now, if you're going to teach Genesis, I hate to recommend myself, but as far as I know, I have the only exegetical doctrinal commentary in print that's true to the King James text. Now, I wouldn't recommend myself alone. If you're going to teach Genesis, there's one work that'll be invaluable to you, and that's the work by Arthur W. Pink called Gleanings from Genesis. There are a couple of other works that you can use in conjunction with this that are very good. Any book by Harry Rimmer on science or the creation, Harry Rimmer, will be excellent to use in conjunction with my commentary and the commentary by, or the comments by Arthur W. Pink, Gleanings in Genesis. The original standard commentary recommended in Genesis is the one by Leopold, Leopold, which is pretty heavy and not very enlightening. Matthew Henry is out. Matthew Henry is a post-millennial, and if you want to get some good devotional thoughts from Genesis, you can get them from Matthew Henry, but nothing of doctrinal import worth very much. The 2 main commentaries used by the commentators on Genesis are the Pulpit Commentary volume on Genesis, our standard work of about 22 volumes, published by Zorneman or Erdman's, I forget which, reprints continually, and the work by John Peter Lang and Adam Clark. Now, those 3, you might use them if you got in a tight place. You might use them for information about Hebrew words, but of course, none of those men that made those commentaries believed the King James Bible is the Word of God, nor of them thought the critical findings of scientific scholarship were superior to the authorized text. So you'll have to be careful in using those. That's Adam Clark, John Peter Lang, we'd say, and the standard pulpit commentary work of 22 volumes, the first volume, I believe, being on Genesis and Exodus. Now, if you take my volume, I believe I'll cover everything they'll cover and answer all their criticisms in my volume. That is, where you have trouble with the pulpit commentary or John Peter Lang or Adam Clark correcting the King James Bible, I believe my commentary goes out of the way to correct them. So there won't be any danger of students losing their faith in the Word. Now, if you're teaching the Gospel of John, a very good work is the work by Arthur W. Pink again. I believe it's 4 volumes on the Gospel of John. It's mainly inspirational and devotional, but very good. Again, the standard works are works written by Lang, Clark, and the pulpit commentary. These 3 are what we call standard commentaries, and they have been used year in and year out, and are always recommended and promoted and sold in order to keep the King James Bible down and keep scholarship on top. There are some other works by John on the Gospel of John, but not too many of them are vary, because John is not too difficult anyway, except in a couple of passages in John 5 and John 6 in the last chapter, and almost any good commentary in John will straighten these things out. I also recommend that in teaching these, you make use of the common up-to-date speech translations in order to get the meaning of a verse, not because it's not in the King James, but in order to see how it's worded when trying to explain it. And again, people have me quite wrong here. I use myself anywhere from 10 to 20 versions in writing my commentaries. The thing is, I just don't ever correct the King James. I leave it as it stands. And where the Living Speech Bibles are amplified over the King James text, I just ignore them. However, they can be helpful sometime in expanding a meaning or giving a variety of meanings that will lead you to the true meaning if you're having trouble with the King James text. Make sure that you expound, however, according to the King James text. And so they might be helpful in some places in John. But as I said before, the commentaries in John are all about the same, and it's not too difficult. Now, in getting to Romans, the best work on it is 2 or 3 volumes by Donald Gray Barnhouse. And Donald Gray Barnhouse has about the best one on. Newell has a commentary on Romans, which is fair, but not very deep. And again, for the exegetical and critical work, John Peter Lang is about the best on the work. And any comments by the Greek scholars are about uniform. On the book of Revelation, there are 4 or 5 very good works. The first of these is the book by Roy Kemp. Anything by Roy Kemp, K-E-M-P, is a good work on Revelation. The work by Dwight Pentecost is as good as any. And Clarence Larkin's book on Revelation, of course, is the best. And Clarence Larkin is the granddaddy of all the expositors on prophecy. Any prophetic writing you get will be a copy of Clarence Larkin, including all the work done by Schofield, Gabeline, Pettengill, and the last 3,000 books published under the pretense of revealing the future. The book, The Late Great Planet Earth, and The Chariot of Gods, of course, are just watered-down Clarence Larkin. That's all they are. And the work by this converted Jew, Kibron, or Kirbon, or whatever his name is just Clarence Larkin in a slick print. Larkin finished all this work before 1909. And when you get Larkin on Daniel and Revelation, you have the last word in either book, and nobody's improved on it. Now, I would also suggest you use my commentary on Revelation, which is not highly exegetical or critical or doctrinal, but as a running commentary. It was made off of tapes. And, however, you will find 4 revelations in my book on Revelation that escape McLean and Pentecost and Kemp and Sauer and Larkin. And these 4 revelations will be given in that commentary on the book of Revelation. And these 4 revelations, of course, come from believing the King James text, which the other expositors did not believe, and henceforth they missed them. So you can use those in teaching these 4 basic books. Now, of course, 4 basic books are not going to take up an entire 3-year course. And certainly you could get 4 more books in. If I was going to recommend 4 more books, I'd very definitely recommend Matthew, Acts, and Hebrews, which are brutal. You get down to try to exposit them, and boy, they're tough. Matthew, Acts, and Hebrews, and possibly Daniel. Now, if you don't have time to teach all that and have to make a choice, knock out Hebrews, and instead teach the 4 Pauline epistles in the middle of your Bible, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians. This will give you a rounded curriculum. If you have time for more, of course, there's more. If I was going to put down 12 basic books in the Bible, I'd say they'd be Genesis, Exodus, Daniel, Matthew and John, Acts and Romans, Hebrews and Revelation, 1 Corinthians, and the 4 Pauline epistles that run Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. And in the Bible Institute, these should not only be outlined. The student should not merely learn the purpose of the writing, the date of authorship, the author and general content and outlines, he should learn the content of the book itself, which can only be learned verse by verse. And of course, this is what's missing from the curriculum of the Christian universities and colleges in America. They're not taking time out to go verse by verse. And where they are, as in the advanced Greek and seminar classes, they are only going verse by verse to change the verse. And as a consequence, we're graduating a whole generation of Bible dumbbells and blockheads who have pat fixed answers they've received from their teachers for answering questions that come up that aren't really biblical answers at all. All right, now further in the Bible Institute, the course that's necessary immediately following Bible courses is church history. I would say church history is an absolute essential. I would also say it's an absolute essential for any nation that's going to survive. By that I mean I'd recommend church history as essential to all junior high schools in the public school system in America. Now, you couldn't teach it. It's too hot. Americans have never told it like it is. They would never tell it like it is. And if it was told like it was, it'd make the hair stand on end. And their babies, they can't stand it that way. But every junior high school in high school America should have a course on church history with a good textbook like Fox's Book of Martyrs or Vatican Imperialism in the 20th Century by Avril Manhattan. When you put out these things, of course, you're said to favor the Protestants. But history very strongly favors the Protestants when it comes to murder, lying, killing, stealing, cheating, perverting the Word of God, murdering, torturing, and crooked diplomacy. And no Christian in this age should have a Bible Institute education without knowing not only what God did in history, but what the devil did in history. You see, the problem here is the Bible closes with Acts 28. As far as the history goes. Now, we can take the first 3 chapters of Revelation and make them typical of the church age. But you may well face it, the history of Bible chronology, as far as the history, a recorded narrative of events in chronological order, ends with Acts 28, verse 31. Now, the question is, how can a man be adapted to the ministry or be adapted to teach or preach the Bible if he doesn't know what took place in the interim, in the gap between Acts 28 and, say, 1980. And the only way you can learn this is by a study of church history. Now, there are a number of church histories available and for use. And as in the case of the major commentaries, there's not enough variation between them to make a great deal of difference. A good church history reads exactly like any other good church history. History is a very stubborn thing. And you have to rewrite history according to your prejudice in order to get a bad church history. A good example of bad church histories are the black histories being taught in the United States. They're being taught by going through and picking out individual black men who've done something or been connected with great events which they wouldn't have been connected with if they hadn't been brought into slavery. And it's a very peculiar thing to watch over here, to watch people trying to make a great people out of the black people by recalling every inch they can get their hand on where a black man did something in America after a white man got him over here. And, of course, this creates a false history. What you get is this great thing about, the black man, too, is this and that. And what you've done is point out how there was a black man killed in the Baltimore riots for the 50 white men, where there was a black battalion or company that fought in the Union War in 3 engagements, where the white divisions or regiments numbered in 300 times that number and fought in all the... you can make the exception, overthrow the rule. We call this the inductive method in science. So when you get to histories, you can get a history by a Roman Catholic scholar like Dollinger and get a painted picture, or you can get one painted by a Protestant, completely anti-Catholic, a bad church history. But generally speaking, history is pretty stubborn when you begin to document things. And documented evidence in court's pretty hard to refute. If you've ever been there and seen it work. And good history is documented evidence. The standard work in church history that all the others borrow from is the 8-volume History of the Christian Church by Philip Schaff. I would say, however, this is too heavy for the average young man to assimilate. It's good for a teacher's reference, and whoever teaches your church history should have access to at least 3 church historians. The first of these should be Philip Schaff, the 8 volumes, History of the Christian Church, Newman, Newman, 2 volumes, The History of the Church. Newman is a Baptist, and it's published by the American Baptist Society. It's a very excellent history, and a little more simplified than Philip Schaff's 8 volumes. Then you should have the work by Latourette, and Latourrette, or something like that, a French name. Latourette, pronounced Latourette, and that's a fairly stable work. There are other historians, of course, and there's the works by D'Aubigné and the Reformation, the Standard Ecclesiastical History by Eusebius, the works of the Venerable Bede, and there's some modern church historians. But really, to teach church history in the Bible Institute, the teacher needs a good backlog of source references, but then for a text in class, get something that's printed a little bit more simple. Get a good big church history book, thick, with large print, that mainly gives an outline, and then the teacher himself fill in the details from his source references. This is the best way to do it, and we'll talk about that more. All right, now, every biblical student who's going to really master the Bible should have training in the original languages. I don't say the original Greek text, the original languages. The original languages were Greek and Hebrew. To do this, one should get a simple Greek grammar, preferably Robertson and Davis. J. Gresham Macon has a good Greek grammar, beginner's Greek grammar, but gets you off to the wrong start by a mispronunciation of epsilon iota as A, where it should be I. And this boggles the student down the rest of the course. Robertson and Davis Greek grammar is one of the very best. For students who wish to go on an advanced Greek grammar, the 3rd year, the book on Greek grammar by A.T. Robertson is about the best in print. A.T. Robertson's small Greek grammar, not his large work, which is about 4 inches thick and about 12 inches by 8 inches, but a small book with a light brown cover, undoubtedly published by Baker, Erdman Zonovan, his Greek grammar for beginners, which is a summation of all 3 years of Greek in one book with all the points discussed. In the 3rd year of Greek, the student should begin translating 1 John or the Gospel of John with the help of the teacher, and the teacher should read aloud a great deal in class. Nothing will help you learn a language like hearing it. And if there's one major fault in the seminaries today in not teaching a student Greek, it's the teacher is not taking time to read and make the student read after him out loud and correct him as he goes. This takes time, but it's worth the time. And in 3rd year Greek, the teacher should read out loud in class at least 15 minutes every period, with the student reading out loud after him and getting the pronunciation right. A Bible Institute should have a course in Hebrew, although certainly not deep. I'd say 1 year of Hebrew is plenty for a Bible Institute, 2 for a maximum. Now, for a number of reasons. In the first place, nobody's fooling with the Old Testament anymore. The next person to fool it's going to be the Jew. The modern Christian has thrown the Old Testament clean out and is dealing only with the New Testament. That doesn't mean we should do it, but it means the accent or emphasis is going to be in the New Testament, so our concentration and study should be there in order to deal with these people who've gotten rid of 3/4 of their Bible. Hebrew can be learned by buying a Hebrew record, Hebrew speech, at any dime store, Woolworth, Kmart, Shopper Center, Shoppers Fair, big department store. You can buy records on the Hebrew language, go home and learn it yourself before you teach it. And again, you'll find that all the teaching is done by hearing the language spoken. It'll be hard to obtain a man who can teach Hebrew, because there isn't a Hebrew teacher hardly in the United States who doesn't hate the King James Bible and has no use for it at all, and corrects it every other verse. We're turning out a few here, 1 or 2, but they'd be hard to get. One of them has gone as a missionary to Honduras and set up a school down there, and the man presently with us is here with us. When he leaves, if he ever goes, he'll make a good Hebrew teacher for somebody, and of course we need him right here. And they should have at least a year of Hebrew. Now, to be a master of the English Bible, it is absolutely essential the student take a course in problem texts. I would absolutely ignore the standard curriculum set up by the standard school, as it is absolutely useless and a waste of money. Now, by that I mean this. In the average school in teaching the student these courses, He is bombarded with a whole multitude of courses that are used to fill out the curriculum to get the required standard of teachers to meet the accreditation. As a consequence, the student has to take biblical theology, dig that, Old Testament theology, systematic theology, biblical doctrines, biblical exegesis, biblical hermeneutics, biblical interpretation, historical theology, New Testament theology, principles of New Testament interpretation. And you know what he's done? He's just thrown $1,000 down the drain. Now, if you want to teach a guy the Bible, give him a course on problem texts. Take out of the Bible the 500 texts that's the most think about and teach the guy to him right. Teach him to him right. I'd solve your systematic, biblical, exegetical flapdoodle. Teach the kid the Bible. Where'd Cain get his wife? Show him. How could the water have covered the earth? Show him. How could the animals get in the ark? Show him. How could the sun stand still? Show him. How come the inscription of the cross don't match? Show him. How come Isaiah was 42 in one place and 22 in the other? Show the guy. Don't waste 4 years on all that biblical, exegetical, theological crap and take the kid and take all his money. When he gets out, somebody can hamstring him the first time he turns around. Teach him the Bible. So one course should be called problem text. In problem text, you should deal with every major contradiction or apparent contradiction in the King James 1611 AV and iron them out. They can be ironed out. Now, I've worked on those problems now for 7 years, and I'll be very frank with you. Of all the apparent supposed contradictions of the Bible, there are not more than 4 that are really difficult. There are not more than 4 that really present any kind of a problem, and they can be solved. Of the others, supposedly running into the hundreds, there is not one of them that you couldn't solve in 15 minutes, with the exception of about 20 of them, which can be solved in about 20 minutes. And most of them be solved in about 3. So teach the student a course, very definitely a course in problem text. Now, every student should have a course in manuscript evidence. The main thing that is missing in Bob Jones and Tennessee Temple, and Dallas Fuller, Moody, Northwestern, Southeastern, Midwestern, and Southeast, but Northeast, and Clearwater, Trinity, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and the Mill, is a course to show the student that every Bible published since 1880 is a Roman Catholic Bible. The student should know that. And he should know why that's so and be able to prove it from the Greek texts that are used. Any Bible student graduating from the Bible Institute should be able to handle the Greek manuscript evidence that has been used to overthrow the King James Bible and reverse it and turn the battery around and fire right back into the face of the enemy. Now, for manuscript evidence, there are 4 books that are essential, and you'll not be able to get along without these books. The first of these books is God Only Wrote One Bible by J.J. Ray, paperback from Eye Opener Publishers in Junction City, Oregon. The next one is Believing Bible Study, which should be required textbook in every Christian school in the universe. The faculties at Bob Jones will not use it. It should be required reading for every person who goes to college. Believing Bible Study by Dr. Edward Hills, a Ph.D. from Columbia and Princeton. Number 3, Which Bible by David Otis Fuller, paperback from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and my work called The Christian's Handbook of Manuscript Evidence. Now, those 4 books, no student should be allowed to graduate with a degree from a Bible Institute or a Christian college or a Christian university without mastering those 4 books. And if he doesn't, he is a Christian who is not equipped for Christian combat, and if I may say so, neither equipped to teach or preach the English Bible properly. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying a man can't be a good preacher and a soul winner without mastering those books. But a teacher of the Bible and a master of the Bible and a scholar of the Bible and a real Bible student, he can never be. That's absolutely essential that you get that material. And that material is Christian material that's true and faithful to the Word of God, not like the sword of the Lord. I got a copy of the sword of oil here recently. They've been sending them to me now, which said, any man that stands in the pulpit and waves a Bible in his hand and says he believes this is the Word of God when he doesn't believe it, that man is a hypocrite and his preaching is a farce. And I thought to myself, it's about time you got in my wagon, you birds. You're sure taking your time coming to it. I never saw a better admission that 80% of the scholars in this country are farce and hypocrites than that right there, including the guy that wrote it. All right, now, next, in Bible Institute, there should be some preparation for the ministry. So far, I've been talking about Bible matters, you see. After all, a Bible Institute is a Bible Institute. Now, for the ministry, I would say the next thing outside of church history and these courses is a course on the local church, and following that, a course on missions. Now, these two are absolutely essential. A school like Bob Jones University that does an instructed student on the local church, a student like a school like Bob Jones University, whose head of the religious department has never been pastor of a local church, and some of them never pastored a church more than 4 years, simply doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't care how much book knowledge you get, you need a course in there taught by a man who knows something about pastoring a local church. Now, information in the local church is voluminous. Anything by Jack Hyles will show you how to build a monstrosity. You may not get to build a monstrosity, however. It may be your fate or fortune to pastor 50 people the rest of your life, or a maximum of 100. Some of you may be consigned to the limbo of forgotten pastors and pastor 30 to 40 people the day you die. So you better have to take everything Jack Hyles says seriously, or you'll get in some bad trouble. I don't recall where Adoniram Judson had any bus ministry. I don't recall where Pat and the New Hebrides ran 4,000 Sunday school, and I advise you to take some of that stuff with a grain of salt. Now, by these remarks, I'm not nullifying Brother Hyles' work. I mean, obviously, he knows how to set up and run a local church in Chicago. That's pretty apparent. I wouldn't undertake to criticize or instruct any man who's done the work he's done. However, I'm nobody's fool, and I don't spend all my life in Chicago. There's many men like Brother Hyles and Brother Falwell. If they came to Pensacola, they wouldn't run 400 in Sunday school 3 years in a row, and you better believe it. I mean, folks are different, and places are different. There are men over here in America who brag about these monstrous things going on and the technique and the know-how. If you put them down in the middle of downtown Tokyo, they wouldn't run 50 in the Sunday school after they'd been there for 10 years. So we must take a universal look at this thing. We teach a man the principles of the local church. We're not going to waste a whole lot of time on the big way to do the big thing. We're going to talk about the biblical, scriptural way to set up a local church. Now, anything you get in the local church written by independent Baptists will be good material. The independent Baptists are the local church people. The articles and books written by Presbyterians and Episcopalians will always have a certain Roman flavor about them. After all, it is the Baptists who have insisted on the separation of church and state, and still insist upon it, and every other denomination, with the possible exception of the Methodists, has a church-state leaning, and right now the United Methodist Church is trying to get control of the government. The Baptist is the only safe way to go. Now, of course, we say Baptist, we've got to qualify. We have Southern Baptist, Northern Baptist, Missionary Baptist, German Baptist, Free Will Baptist, Independent Baptist, Bible Baptist, Baptist Baptist, Primitive Baptist, Hardshell Baptist, Two-Seed One Baptist. And actually, I shouldn't have to qualify Baptist by saying independent. The local Baptist church should be independent no matter where it is. That is autonomous, we say. Books on the local church by Jack Hyles are good. The work by Ensminger on the Sunday school is very good, that came out of J. Frank Norris's work. And you can get good books on the local church, setting up a local church, from almost any independent Baptist source. But the Bible student should be taught this even if he doesn't become a pastor. If he doesn't become a pastor, he should know the local church is a self-governing, autonomous body, that in it the church offices are elders and deacons, that the ordained elder is called a bishop or pastor, that the deacons are ordained and put into the spiritual ministry. not the financial ministry, running the church, spiritual ministry. He should be taught the matters of deed, corporation, finance, tax exempt, the deeds of the property, taught the matter of how to set up a building, how to organize, how to incorporate, how to set up bylaws, ways of choosing deacons, way of choosing deacons. That's a good one. You may have to choose some of them out. Way of setting up Sunday school, operating a Sunday school, helping the teachers, visitation, prayer meeting. He should learn these things. The ordinances in the local church, baptism by immersion after regeneration, the Lord's Supper as a memorial. He should learn these things and be taught these things. All right, next, on missions. There are a couple of standard works on missions, the main one by Glover, and there are many other good works that you can get, paperback and otherwise. And I would advise a man teaching missions, instead of going by one textbook, to expose his students to every type of missionary work. The most valuable thing in studying missionary work is the autobiography or biography. And if a man wants to learn how it's done by studying the lives of men who did it. For this reason, the teacher should obtain for the school library 20 copies of the autobiography of Patton in the New Hebrides, 20 biographies of the work of David Livingston, 20 paperback, don't waste your time on the cloth stuff, not that much time left. 20 copies of the work by Mary Slessor in Africa, 20 copies of the work by Hudson Taylor, the China Inland Mission, 20 copies of the work in Burma by Adoniram Judson, 20 copies of the life of C.T. Stead, 20 copies of the work by William Carey. Now, of course, there are other biographies, but these are the main ones. These will give the student an idea of the mission field in Africa, India, China, and Burma. Now, it's true that this will give them a picture of the last century, and of course, things have changed. Now, to come up with this change, the work should be obtained called The Indigenous Church, a paperback book, and then The Life of Nate Saint's a good one. But the best thing to do is get material from Baptist Mid-Missions or Baptist International Missions. Get them to mail you material for the class, and they'll flood you. They'll flood you. Baptist Mid-Missions will give you their whole setup in paper, big, heavy paperback spiral notebooks on every phase of the mission field, every phase of deputation work, every phase of qualification, every phase of terms overseas, furloughs home, pensions, insurance, and all this and that. Baptist Mid-Mission will give you excellent material for it, and you can probably get less material, but as good a material from BIM and other Baptist organizations. The students should be taught all the missionary methods, including the neo-evangelical method, the modernist method, and the method of team, the interdenominational methods, so he can know the dangers of a false missionary approach. He also should be taught especially the material on the World Council of Churches, the modernist organization which is out to ecumenicize the missionary stations and bring them under the auspices of the National Council of Churches. Then in addition to this, in a Bible Institute where a missions class is taught, it is absolutely essential that the students hear from a missionary at regular intervals. If you can possibly get one missionary speaker for every 6 class periods, it'd be excellent. If not, at least one every 12. By the time you've had 12 class periods, they should have heard directly from the mouth of a man who is engaged in missionary work and doing the job. By the same token, the class in local church, we have preachers come in here who talk about the problems of the ministry, and these preachers come in and discuss them with the class, and the class asks questions. Really, when you get right down to it, you can get something from reading books, but there's nothing like having a pastor in and putting him on the spot and asking how he handles certain problems that come up. This should be done in the local church class and in the missions class. Again, the large universities, this phase is sadly neglected. And sometime a retired local pastor will teach a class, but that won't do the job. If you're going to get a local church ministry, you better hear from men who are doing it right then and going on and dealing with contemporary problems. Now, these are the main courses for the Bible Institute. The Bible courses, the church history courses, the courses in original languages, problem text, manuscript evidence, the local church, and missions. Now, after this, Other courses are not really mandatory, although you may put in what you like for the particular job that you want to do, and your particular situation may dictate a different curriculum than some other curriculum. But these are the main ones. For students in third year, they should have some kind of teaching that will enable them to fight off Christian and secular education. That is the greatest damning influence against the preaching of the Bible and revival these days is education, under science and philosophy. And the man from the Bible Institute should have enough background in higher education in the time he's in the Institute to put these fellows in their place and back them off the boards. Not only with the Bible, but on their own ground, just shut them up. Like Paul said, rebuke them sharply and set their ears back. Somebody said, I don't like that approach. Well, you're a fool if you don't. Paul did it that way. Christ did it that way. Peter did it that way. And if you don't do it that way, it's because you're yellow. I get tired trying to explain things. And folks say, well, you get a false emphasis on the Ruckman. You turn into soldiers. You don't have enough love. Well, let's just face it. People talk like that about half sick anyway. And they spend so much time with trash and junk, they don't even know what the New Testament emphasis is. Those pastors on love, you never read that kind of stuff talking about dealing with people. You read about how love was a great gift and a fruit of the Holy Spirit, but you never read that stuff about dealing with smart aleck educators who think they're smart enough to change the Bible. You come in that close to Christian truth, you just get a cord of whips, a whip made out of cords, and knock over the tables and dump the money on the floor. You'd be a lot more scriptural in your position. So, in talking about these matters, a student who goes to Bible Institute should spend some time on what we call advanced theology. Now, you may not call the course that. You might call the course modern science, or you might call the course philosophy, or a philosophical seminar. But somewhere there, the student should be shown the enemy's position. And the enemy's position should be refuted and G2'd and infiltrated and encircled, and then undermined and bombed. And really, that's the only way to look at it. And a matter of fact, you look at it another way, you wind up a communist slave, and don't you fool yourself for a minute. This hogwash Christianity, where it's just love, 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 is the talk of people who are going to wind up international communists. And you say, oh, Brother Ruckman, I'm not that I believe in love. You haven't got the backbone to stand and fight it out. And the reason why you don't is because you got your hands tied with your kinfolk and your money. You're not fooling anybody but yourself. Don't try to fool me. Get off it. As I was saying now, the enemy position should be reconnoitered. You ought to send out a reconnaissance patrol and come back and report and get the positions. And so in the third year, the student should be exposed to a higher type of learning. And as far as getting a man to teach it goes, I don't know where you're going to get a man that can take the tradesman's vocabulary and reduce it to street language, but that's what's going to have to be done. You say, what do you mean by that? I mean this. I mean, no man should leave that Bible Institute without knowing that evolution is a three-ring circus with a joke on the students. That is, no man who leaves a Bible institution should take an evolution as serious, no matter what his education are, what his degrees are. No man leaving that school should have any respect for scholarship, hours spent in study, effort spent in research that have been aimed at overthrowing the authorized text. And that's what I mean. And the most deadly thing you can have is tolerance toward the enemy in this kind of work. It'll fix you, and it'll eventually make an infidel out of you as far as the Bible goes. You won't deny the fundamentals of faith, but you get rid of that book quick. The third year course, somewhere there should have some courses in it, or one course. I condense them. You might not be able to. You might not have the speed or the time or be able to reduce the thing to a simplified element. I don't want to speak as a fool boasting, but one of my talents is to take something that looks unutterably complex and incalculable and incomprehensible and cut it down to mud and barbed wire where any fool can look it right in the face and identify it. And I don't know if you can get a teacher who can do that, but you should get one when it comes to these problems. Now, I'll show you what I mean. Colossians 2:8 is a warning against philosophy. 1 Timothy 6:20 is a warning against science. Now, having that warning, the student should be taught the wherefore. Our student who leaves the Bible Institute should know what pragmatism is and what's wrong with it. What naturalism, realism, and idealism are, what's wrong with them. What existentialism is, what's wrong with it. He should know what the teaching on pantheism and Unitarianism is and what's wrong with it. He should know what the teaching of evolution is and what's wrong with it. He should know what's wrong with hyper-Calvinism and hyper-dispensationalism. He should be able to unhinge these things and take them apart and deal with them. And know the definition of the terms, the main teachings of it, how they're to be refuted, what they're to be refuted with, what the Bible says about them, what the Bible doesn't say about them, and how to handle them. You might have 3 courses for this. One course in, you might call it Fables of Science. Well, now, you see, that's how I think. You couldn't call it that. That's what it ought to be called, though. Or science fiction. Now, you couldn't call it that. You might call it Scientific Research 1. Scientific Research 2, Scientific Research 3, and use the Bible as the scientific textbook wherewith to correct the physical sciences, which, of course, it's quite able to do. The Word of God is living, it's quick, it's powerful, it's sharper than a two-edged sword, so it's quite able to correct any scientist anytime he gets ready, and it will. And so what you do is take the findings of philosophy, science, and theology and submit them to the authority of the King James Bible, and then you correct them. You take men like Einstein, show what he taught about relativity and about meaningful relations and the definition of meaning. Take Einstein's equations and correct them with the King James Bible. It's very easy to do, and you should know how to do it. You take the findings of Lysenko at the Russian Institute, and the psychological works and experiments of Pavlov and Jung and Menninger, and correct them with the King James text. That is, the student should leave the Bible Institute with one fact clearly in mind, and that is, there is no authority on heaven or earth or in hell higher than the authority of God's infallible Word, and He has that infallible Word in His back pocket. Now, if there's one thing a Bible Institute graduate ought to get when he gets out, he ought to get that through his head. And when any man corrects that book, regardless of his scholarship or his findings or his past, present, and future degrees or attainment, he should be ignored just like a plate full of rotten eggs. So somewhere there has to be a course that teaches that student those things. Now, there are a number of very good textbooks for these courses. The first of these is the Biblical Flood and the Ice Age Epic. The Genesis Flood or Biblical Flood and the Ice Age Epic by a man named Patton. Patton. Excellent material. Another one is The Flood by Rehwinkel. R-E-H-W, I think, K-I-N, no, R-E-W-H-I-N-K-E-L, Rehwinkel. Very excellent work. The work by Byron Nelson, After Its Kind, should be required teaching in every Christian school in the world. After Its Kind, by Byron Nelson. Any of the works by Harry Rimmer are excellent. The work All About the Bible by Sidney Collett should be a required textbook. C-O-L-L-E-T-T. All About the Bible by Sidney Collett. And the teacher should take the student through that carefully and make him learn that textbook and quiz him on that textbook. The outstanding modern work, which completely overthrows the finding of all modern science, are the 2 works by E. Wilder Smith, the Doctor of Pharmaceutical Knowledge at the University of Chicago. The first of these is called The Origin of Life. The other is called Man, His Origin and His Destiny. E. Wilder Smith, written in German, translated in English. These 2 works completely overthrow the entire curriculum of every state university in the United States, and do it with evidence that can be proved in court in legal procedure. And the student should get some of that material there. Along the lines of philosophy, he should be taught the weaknesses and failures of every major philosopher in the world to solve any problem. The outstanding testimony against science and philosophy is that neither branch of knowledge has ever solved one problem mankind ever had. That's the main thing against them. And the The Christian, when he graduates from the Bible Institute, should know that and be able to prove it in court with the evidence given by the men themselves.